welcome to Live from FSS. I'm Scott Wolfson, your host and the owner of Florida Sun Studios. Live from FSS is a new online show we broadcast here weekly on Thursdays at 11 a.m. right on Facebook. The show, Live from FSS, serves as a platform for anyone interested in hosting their own show, promoting their business, getting their brand out there. Live from FSS is a show that we started about 6 weeks ago, and it's caught fire with many of our followers. Live from FSS features tips and techniques you can use in your own broadcast. We're going to take you behind the scenes in many of our live broadcasts to show you what goes on at Florida Sun Studios. A lot of people have questions. They see the virtual sets. They're like, well, how do you get those backgrounds on there? Well, we're going to show that in future broadcasts. Today, we've got an exciting show for you, for all you political buffs out there. Shortly, I'm going to introduce you to university law professor and political activist Tim Canova. Tim has been a regular here at Florida Sun Studios, and I'm so delighted to have him here today. But before we introduce Tim, I want to tell you a little bit about Florida Sun Studios, for those of you not familiar with our operation. Florida Sun Studios is an independent broadcast studio located here in beautiful downtown Fort Lauderdale, near the airport, the seaport, the major highways, and all the downtown businesses. We service all the major news and sports networks, everyone from Fox News, CNN, ESPN, MSNBC, CNBC, ABC, CBS, NBC, and every other acronym that brings you news. We're also a full-service, turnkey professional solution video production studio. We offer everything from corporate videos, commercials, PSAs, now offering internet live shows, Facebook Live, YouTube Live, and Periscope Live shows. And without any further ado, I want to introduce this week's guest, my friend, Tim Canova.
Thank you, Scott.
Thank you so much for coming on the set.
Thank you. My pleasure. Great to be here.
It seemed at one point that you practically lived here during the election.
Yeah, during my campaign, everything kind of went viral. You know, we had all the cable channels from MSNBC and CNN to Fox News that were constantly calling up for interviews, and it was wonderful to be able to come right here to Florida Sun Studios and to be interviewed in a very relaxing environment.
Well, it's a pleasure having you here, Tim. When I met you last spring, we clicked right away. Yes. Just the energy I felt with you, a positive, upbeat guy, putting aside politics. Yes. And something I want to explain to our viewers that Florida Sun Studios is a nonpartisan player when it comes to politics. We don't take sides. We welcome everyone to our studio. Left, right, Democrat, Republican, Independent. We're a home to all our guests. We give those folks, everyone, a platform so they can get their message out there, speak their mind. And if they have desires to host their own show, to host their own show. As a lot of people have expressed interest who have been our guest or that know of the studio, they've said, hey, you know, I'd love to be the next Sean Hannity or the next Nancy Grace or big star Brooke Baldwin. But what a lot of people don't realize is that the chances of achieving that once-in-a-lifetime dream are rather slim to none. And that's where the Live from FSS platform comes in. It gives those a platform to get their message out there, host their own show, become a guest on Florida Sun Studios, and get the buzz that you so wish for on social media. Tim, for those of our audience that are not familiar with you, and by now everyone should be familiar with the name Tim Canova, you literally hit fire last year. I mean, Democrat, Republican, Independent, moms, soccer moms, professionals, high school kids. You had a connection. You have a connection to people. You're a people person.
Yes.
Can you tell our audience a little bit about you, who the man Tim Canova is, what your interests are, what sparks your energies?
Sure. Well, I'm an educator. I've been teaching at the law school level as a law professor for 2 decades now. So I do feel comfortable around people because I'm around real people all the time. You know, colleagues, students, staffers. And, you know, I think from teaching for 20 years or more, you start getting a feel for the kinds of problems that ordinary folks are facing. You know, I see what it's like for law students who, you know, they've graduated from college. There's not a lot of great job opportunities in the market in really the past decade now, since the financial crisis of 2008. I think it's a lot tougher for college grads than it ever was before in my lifetime. So a lot of folks go on to law school, try to better themselves and get higher skills. And it's a tough market for young lawyers as well. And a lot of students are graduating in debt. So I could certainly understand the kind of anxiety and disappointment that a lot of young folks have felt with the political system, that they feel that neither of the major parties has been addressing their concerns and the kinds of issues that they face. I've lived in Florida on and off for the past 20 years. I started my teaching career at the University of Miami, moved away for a tenure track job at University of New Mexico, but the whole time wanted to get back to Florida. And I've been teaching at Nova Southeastern University now for the last 5 years. So I love South Florida. I love all of Florida. Became an avid scuba diver years ago. My skill level has deteriorated. Now I just free dive. I would need to get recertified. But I just love the outdoors here. We have a beautiful state here.
I think if there's one word to describe Tim Canova, if I had to come up with one word, it would be passionate. You have that passion, whether it's in your personal life, business, being a law professor. I'm sure it must be a delight being a student of yours at the university.
Thanks.
And you're very passionate about the issues you believe in.
Yes.
You're very passionate about the environment, saving the environment.
Mm-hmm.
That was one of the issues that you brought up in the election last year in your campaign.
That is true.
That kind of gets swept to the side, and people, we've got to save our planet.
Yeah.
And we have some edited footage when you were touring in Martin County, Florida last year.
Oh, yeah.
The toxic algae that was blooming there in Stuart, Florida.
That's right.
I mean, it was just...
It was very toxic. I mean, to be anywhere near it, the odor of it was overwhelming. You had to wear a mask over your nose, over your mouth. Your eyes would get irritated. And for people who were living right there in the shadow of this toxic algae bloom and couldn't get away from there, it really has an impact on people. It changes their lives. Kids have to stay away from the water. People get infections and end up in the hospital. In fact, Kenny Hinkle from Bull Sugar, who I was visiting just some weeks later, ended up in the hospital. People don't realize how noxious, how toxic that tide really is.
And we're going to show our viewers now. We've got edited footage of you touring Martin County, Florida and Stuart, Florida. Let's roll that footage.
We're about to go see the horror of all horrors.
We're walking closer to this canal that goes right out to an inlet. It smells awful. And there you see it. Hard to imagine any sea life surviving this.
It's gonna stink, it's gonna be nasty, it's disgusting, and this is the toxic petri dish of my community. This is happening to my community. It's absolutely disgusting. It smells, it reeks to high heaven. I've never smelled anything like this before. And thanks Central Marine for letting us come out here today, because they're ready to go home and close shop because they can't do any business.
Just saw the algae bloom right here at the marina. It's awful. It stinks to the high heavens. You breathe it for 10 minutes and you feel like you want to gasp for air. And I don't see how any sea life can survive underneath this algae.
And we're killing our tourist economy. We're killing it with toxic algae from Lake Okeechobee. The massive amount of water coming through the C-44 into the St. Lucie River is catastrophic on an entire economy and an ecosystem. You gotta see this to believe it. And this is reduced discharges. More reduced discharges. This is all toxic blue-green algae from Lake Okeechobee. Manatees are stuck here at the St. Lucie locks until they open and let them downstream or upstream. You can see the prop scars on them over there. Okay.
And they're
in the midst, they're stuck in this blue-green algae and can't get out of it.
Wow, Tim, you look at that footage, the murky waters and those manatees and those animals that have to live in that filth.
Yeah, and die in that filth. We lost a lot of manatees last year and other fish life, other sea life. I heard somebody, I think it was Kenny Hinkle, mention right there in that clip that it's terrible for the tourist industry as well. So it's having big impacts on the Florida economy and on public health. And you know, the toxic algae that's coming out of Okeechobee and heading to both the east and west coast of Florida, that is a pollution problem. That's a contamination problem. But it's also part of another problem, which is that the waters of Okeechobee are not draining southward into the Everglades. They're not recharging the Biscayne aquifer. So, and the Biscayne aquifer itself is in some danger because of rising sea levels from climate change. It's beginning to lead to some, what scientists call saltwater intrusion into the aquifer. If there's too much saltwater intrusion over a period of years, we'll lose the drinking water in South Florida. And people aren't really aware of the science of this and the reality of it. We had a labor leader actually say to me, "Can you move the aquifer?" I mean, I thought he was kidding. You can't move the aquifer. We got the aquifer. We're stuck with the aquifer we have. And if we pollute it, it'll be gone.
What can average, ordinary, everyday citizens do to protect the environment?
Well, I think people have to start getting a lot more active than we have in the past. You know, I think in the past, the kind of damage that politics and politicians could do was somewhat limited, but we've seen in the last decade it gets worse and worse. So we have to get active. The politicians aren't looking out for our interests. They're lining their pockets with campaign contributions, whether it's from the big sugar companies that are south of Lake Okeechobee, or it's Florida Power and Light and the fossil fuel industry, or it's Wall Street banks. They're really not looking out for the interests of ordinary residents of Florida. And you see this disconnect. Over the past decade, how many times have the voters of the state of Florida passed referendums? You know, it requires a 60% vote in Florida to pass a referendum. And each time a referendum gets passed, it's up to our legislators in Tallahassee to implement the referendum. And instead of implementing it, they always try to drag it down and change, you know, to nullify the referendum afterwards. We see it happening right now in Tallahassee. We had passed a solar initiative last summer, Amendment 4. We passed a medical marijuana initiative, Amendment 2. Both of those are being gutted in Tallahassee right now. The legislator is in the pockets of special interests, corporate interests. They don't want to implement it. And it goes back a lot of years. This state has passed high-speed rail. It passed a referendum to limit class sizes to 25 in K-12. And it passed a referendum dealing with Lake Okeechobee. That was Amendment 1, to basically earmark a source of revenue from real estate taxes to buy up the sugar farms south of Okeechobee and to convert it into grassland so that the waters of Okeechobee could drain into the Everglades. Every one of those referendums that I mentioned, I think I mentioned high-speed rail as well, every one of them gets gutted in Tallahassee. So there's a problem, it's a disconnect, where ordinary folks are not really being represented well by their elected officials who are taking a lot of big campaign contributions. And this is really what made my campaign an outsider campaign. We pledged at the outset we wouldn't take a penny from any corporate interests, and we held to that. So this was a people-funded campaign. It was a real grassroots campaign.
And I think, don't hold me to the numbers, but you had, I think, a record-breaking several 100,000 individual contributions averaging in the low 20s.
Yes, actually, we had 209,000, I believe, individual contributions. Each contributor, I think, contributed on average $22. Each actual contribution, because some contributors donated more than once, each contribution, I think, had an average size of $17. I know Bernie Sanders had $27, so some people were calling me the mini Bernie.
That's pretty amazing how a small grassroots organization. And I should mention also that you're the chairman of Progress for All.
Yes, thank you for mentioning that.
We're going to get to that in a second. I want to ask you about Progress for All and what the mission of the group is. I want to give a special shout out to some folks that are joining us. Donna Farbad, Blair Somberg. Got to give a special happy birthday wish to my friend, also a fan of Florida Sun Studios and live from FSS, George Chimente, wishing you a happy birthday. And we're going to say hello to Brett Getz and Manny Alvarez, who are also joining the conversation. And getting back to Progress for All.
Sure.
Tell us a little bit about that.
So at the conclusion of our campaign, of course, we came out of the campaign with a lot of grassroots support all over the state of Florida and all over the country. And we felt an obligation to keep speaking up on the issues for our supporters. And we created a community action group called Progress for All. And it's committed to the same small donor grassroots model as that the campaign was. So we only take small donations from small donors. We have an office in downtown Hollywood, Florida, with a small staff. We've got 3 full-time staffers right now, but we've got a lot of volunteer energy as well. And we've been getting involved in a whole range of issues and really trying to move the dial in Florida politics in a distinctly progressive direction. So we've been speaking out a lot on the environmental issues against the Sable Trail pipeline in the north of Florida and in central Florida. This is a 515-mile pipeline that will move 1 billion cubic feet of fracked gas each and every day right through the upper Floridan aquifer, and it's sinkhole country as well. So there's so many dangers involved. The political classes look the other way. Part of it is that Florida Power and Light, one of the companies involved in the consortium of firms that are building this pipeline, has given campaign contributions all over the state to Republicans and Democrats alike. And then we also have a governor, Rick Scott, who has invested $700,000 of his own personal fortune into this pipeline. So a lot of folks are looking out just for their own short-term interest, whether it's a financial interest or it's a political interest, and they're not looking out for the longer-term interests of the people of Florida, of our drinking water, of the environment. If something goes wrong in the Sable Trail pipeline and we start having a polluted aquifer, the upper Floridan aquifer provides 60% of the state's drinking water at a time when, again, the Biscayne aquifer in South Florida already has its challenges with saltwater intrusion. I fear that someday we're going to wake up 6 months or 6 years from now and the entire state could look like Flint, Michigan, where we could be reliant on bottled water for everything from brushing our teeth to taking showers. You know, this should not be happening in our state. Our state is really in the front line in this challenge of climate change. Because of rising sea levels, there's no other state that's threatened the same way that Florida is. And we should be leading the way. We should be providing a model for the nation in converting to solar energy and wind and other renewable forms of energy. This is what the people of Florida want. Last year, 73% of the voters voted for a solar amendment. They realize this is the sunshine state. We shouldn't be dependent any longer on fossil fuels that are going to keep baking this planet, melting the solar ice caps and raising the ocean levels around us.
It almost seems that people don't take an interest until it directly affects them. I'm sure the folks in Martin County felt that effect. Yeah. You said that the gentleman that you went touring the Everglades with,
Kenny Hinkle from Bull Sugar,
he got sick.
He did. He was in the hospital for some time. Not long after I had met with him down there. And I could see why. I mean, you saw the footage you showed. Right. If you weren't wearing that mask, you'd be real sick in no time at all. Just 10 minutes near that waterfront was enough, even with a mask on. Wow, but I think you're right. People don't really react until the wolf's at the door, until it's a real full-blown crisis. The fear, of course, is that with climate change and rising sea levels and the threats to our aquifer, by the time it becomes an apparent crisis, it could be too late.
Too late, right. Yeah. And we look at the folks in Flint, Michigan, the crisis that they're dealing with. Mm-hmm. We don't need to have another Flint, Michigan.
That's right.
Right, and that could happen anywhere. And as you said, this state should be on the front lines of combating those issues.
That's right, and converting to solar. I mean, they call this the Sunshine State for a reason.
Right.
You know, and I've said I've pointed out time and again that solar is now very economical. We can create a lot of jobs by converting to solar. If you put solar panels on half the acreage of the Sable Trail pipeline, 515 miles by 50 meters wide, if you put solar panels on just half the acreage, you'd produce more energy than all that frack gas that's going to go through those pipelines.
Amazing. Yeah. And getting back, you were a relative newcomer to the political scene.
Yes.
Until last year, and your passion, as I said, it comes through in your politics, and not making it Democrat, Republican, Independent. You want to reach out to a wide, vast audience.
Yes.
And because the issues you care about are not a Republican, Democrat, independent issue.
Not at all.
These are issues that affect us all. Yes. We're living on this planet together.
Yes. And I was a lifelong Democrat. I worked on Capitol Hill as a much younger man. I worked as a legislative aide to the late U.S. Senator Paul Tsongas. As a law professor, I've been writing about political issues for decades, mostly writing about the Federal Reserve and monetary policy and the need for a federal infrastructure bank. So these were issues that were animating me as a scholar and as a citizen that I felt very frustrated with both parties, and particularly my party, the Democratic Party. I felt so frustrated that first I registered independent for a couple of years, and then I decided to re-register Democrat and to challenge the head of the Democratic National Committee. I thought she was, Debbie Wasserman Schultz was really the epitome of what was wrong with the political system. She was swimming in a lot of corporate money, and she was really representing those big corporate interests over those of her own constituents. And probably one of the first issues that brought me in, way before I became a candidate, was the Trans-Pacific Partnership, this TPP trade deal. And you know, the elites are the ones who negotiated the trade deal. They were trying to slip it through without people paying attention. But last year, you know, I got to say, in 2016, people were waking up. A lot of it was the Bernie Sanders campaign. I think my campaign woke up a lot of folks here in South Florida, but also around the country. And by the end of the campaign, every candidate who was still left standing was against the Trans-Pacific Partnership, for what it's worth. Donald Trump, Hillary Clinton shifted her position, Bernie Sanders was against the TPP. So there's a whole bunch of issues. I think that I was well prepared as a law professor, as a legal scholar, to jump into the political arena.
It's obvious that you are very popular and you connect with both sides of the aisle and those in between. We have some footage of you when you were campaigning last 4th of July, just the supporters, just the enthusiasm that they had for your candidacy. We've got footage of that, and I want our folks to see
Fantastic.
Tim Canova, the superstar that you are. Let's roll that footage.
We're really pumped to be here for Tim Canova today on Thursday of Independence. Woo! Yeah!
Happy 4th, everyone. Happy Independence Day. You know, Independence Day, the Declaration of Independence, it's about life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness for everyone, not just for the few. That's what our campaign's about, progress for all.
Tim! Yeah! It's Tim, guys!
How's
Thank
it going?
you.
Good to see you.
I'll be excited to vote for you.
Thank you.
You're
Thank you so
welcome.
much. Happy 4th.
My name is Joyce.
Happy 4th.
I'm voting for Tim because I know he will make a positive, sustainable change in this country.
Don't get up. Thanks for your service. Thank you. Happy 4th, guys. Thank you. Thank you. All right. Thanks a lot. My pleasure. Thank you.
Give it up for Tim Canova, the candidate for U.S. Congress.
Tim, as you can see there, and in person, I have the pleasure of knowing you as a friend and as a studio guest of mine. You're a likable guy. No matter where you stand on the political spectrum of things, you're the type of guy that you can go out, have a beer, have a drink, lunch, and you're an authentic guy.
Well,
and I think
thanks.
that's how you resonate.
I appreciate hearing that. You know, seeing that clip was great to watch it again. July 4th was so much fun. We had 2 or 3 parades that day. We ended up down at the boardwalk at Hollywood Beach, and we were flying planes up and down the boardwalk with banners for our campaign. There was a lot of great energy in that campaign.
And, you know, putting aside politics, and it's something I want to emphasize to the audience again, our live from FSS audience in Florida Sun Studios. Florida Sun Studios is a neutral, nonpartisan player when it comes to politics, religion, social issues. We merely give our guests, like Tim and others, a platform to speak their mind, get their message out there, and we accept opposing viewpoints too. Maybe in some future shows, we may have a debate style live from FSS, which would be nice. I'm sure Tim would like to take part in that. And we basically want to be a platform for those who may otherwise not get their message out there. A lot of our studio guests, they're booked on CNN and Fox and MSNBC and the other networks. And we want to extend the Live from FSS platform, the professional turnkey solution to all our guests. So that's something that we just want to emphasize, that we are nonpartisan, we don't take sides, but it's kind of hard not to like Tim Canova.
Well, thanks. I wish the Democratic National Committee and the party structure here in Florida had been neutral also in my campaign, in a lot of internal party disputes. Primary campaigns. We saw that the DNC put its finger on the scales in the Bernie Sanders campaign to try to undermine Bernie Sanders campaign. The same thing was happening here in Florida in my challenge against Wasserman Schultz. So I respect what the media does and what you do to provide a forum that's nonpartisan, that doesn't take sides, but lets people see and hear the views of different people and make up their own minds. I hope that the party moving forward, the Democratic Party, will have learned some lessons from the fiasco of 2016 and try to play it down the middle. Try to be very neutral in intra-party disputes or primary challenges, I should say.
You know, we saw a lot of controversy, not only in your race, other races. We're seeing it now with the presidential race. Now, law enforcement strongly believes that Russia and other foreign state factors played a role in the election and could have or could have not tilted the election. WikiLeaks, you had President Trump praising WikiLeaks and the information that was coming from them, and now the administration seems to be singing a little bit of a different tune now, talking about possible extradition of Julian Assange, the head of WikiLeaks. And not to pigeonhole or corner anyone, but it seemed that the Democrats were very concerned, when all this came out with the election, the presidential election, that a foreign entity such as Russia could have possibly had an influence, and Republicans were concerned too. But then you had other folks saying, well, it's the contents that were released what's important. What do you make of all this?
Well, it's interesting. When you look back years ago when George W. Bush was president, it was the Democrats who were praising WikiLeaks. WikiLeaks was publishing information that had been leaked to WikiLeaks from whistleblowers on the inside of the Bush administration. And Bradley Manning, Chelsea Manning, was perhaps one of the most visible cases of somebody from the inside who had leaked damaging information or embarrassing information to WikiLeaks so that the American public could have a better idea of what was going wrong in the war in Iraq. You could go all the way back to the Vietnam War and the Pentagon Papers, where it was leakers on the inside that released these Pentagon Papers, and the New York Times published it. We wouldn't have said that the New York Times was working for a foreign intelligence agency. We would look at the New York Times as being a mass media committed to publishing the truth. And, I think WikiLeaks has done an awful lot of good over the years in publishing an awful lot of leaked information that has cast a spotlight on what's going wrong in our politics and in our government. Now the shoe's on the other foot, and Democrats don't like that WikiLeaks published information that was damaging to the DNC or embarrassing to the DNC. It's not clear where the information came from. It's been referred to as a hack many times, but it's also been referred to as leaks. There are a lot of folks who think that the information was initially leaked from within the DNC. A hack occurred afterwards. Who would have done the hack? I know there's a consensus of intelligence agencies that blame Russia, but then again, the CIA itself was hacked. I shouldn't say hacked. There was a WikiLeaks treasure trove of information about the CIA's own programs that shows that the CIA itself has this Operation Umbrage where they can hack and leave footprints to blame it on other foreign intelligence agencies. So it's very unclear what exactly happened in 2016. I think there should be a congressional investigation or a nonpartisan investigation with everything on the table. How the leaks occurred, were there hacks, who was behind it, but the focus should not just be on foreign intelligence. We should have a better idea of what our own intelligence agencies are doing. Trump mentioned this many times during the campaign, and we can't avoid the fact that our own intelligence community has been wrong on some very big questions, such as were there weapons of mass destruction in Iraq? Now we have that playing over again in Syria. So we need investigations before we start going to war, and that's something that Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard has spoken about. It's taken a lot of courage on her part, a lot of integrity to stand firm on this and to call for investigations before Congress authorizes any use of force.
And I think it was Senator Marco Rubio, our senator down here in Florida, one of our two senators, and he cautioned when folks were wherever they stood, they were happy about the release of WikiLeaks, some were not. He cautioned, hey, the Republicans could be next. So you brought that up. We should be concerned that the information on one hand may be vital and good to know. How it was obtained was another situation. It's kind of tricky politics here. I mean,
well, it is.
Nothing's safe.
I just saw a clip of John Kennedy speaking to the press, and he was asked about this. This is all the way back in 1962, about leaks from within his administration. And, he was somewhat philosophical about it. Nobody likes to have leaks coming from their administration, but, this is inevitable in a free society with a free press. And, let's talk about what the leaks are revealing and try to have better government as a result. And I do think that should be our attitude. Instead of, shooting the messenger, and the mainstream media and the alternative media are often seen as a messenger. Instead of criticizing the messenger, let's take a look at what actually was revealed and try to learn some lessons from it.
Well, that sounds good. It sounds like a start, at least. We want to give a shout out to a lot of you folks who are joining us. Want to give a special shout out to Shelley, Daniel, Michael Richmond, Gloria Fern, Marianne, Chris, Blair Somberg, who we mentioned before, and Alcibiades Ramos. Thank you all for joining us today. We're live from FSS. I'm here with Tim Canova, political activist, the chairman of Progress for All, and also a university law professor. Quite a busy man. When we also want to encourage you, if you have any questions or comments for Tim or myself, we want to encourage you to join the conversation by sending us your questions and comments, and we'll do the best to get back to you during the show. And for those of you we don't get to during the show, we'll answer afterward. But we want everyone to become engaged. Tim, it kind of leads me to the next question. And this is kind of like, what does the political future hold for Tim Canova?
Yeah. Oh, I don't really know at this moment, and I'm not trying to play coy. So I'm a professor of law at Nova Southeastern University. We're concluding a busy semester. I'm grading exams. I'm grading final research papers. I haven't really had a lot of time to think about, should there be a next step for me, a second act, another campaign to run. I figured it'll be a long summer, and I'll make some decisions during the summertime. Quite frankly, I've got a lot of folks who would like to see me do a round 2 against Wasserman Schultz. That's a possibility. Other folks are trying to urge me into other races. For now, I've just really stayed focused. Our team at Progress for All has stayed focused on the issues. There's so many issues to deal with. There's a legislative session going on in Tallahassee. We're trying to stay focused on that because that's what's relevant right now. We can't drop the ball on things that the state legislature is considering right now just because we're spinning our wheels on some hypothetical future campaign. I do think there probably will be a future campaign, but people are still recovering from the last one. 2016 was quite an upside down year for a lot of folks. So it's still a little early to be talking about 2018.
Understood. But if and when Tim Canova makes that big announcement, could I have the exclusive, or at least the sidetrack here at Florida Sun Studios, and invite you back?
Absolutely. I'd love to be back and talk about it when that day comes. In the meantime, and I recognize a lot of the names that you mentioned. So some of our supporters are the ones who are tuning in, and I'm glad to hear that. But in the meantime, folks can go to progressforall.org, and they can get an idea of the range of issues that we're working on, and they can sign up and receive our emails and updates on the legislative session and the other issues that are happening.
So whether or not you decide to run for political office, and we're not putting pressure on you one way or the other,
right.
We could expect you to stay active with Progress for All and to continue to be an advocate for those issues, those local issues, especially here in South Florida, that you care so deeply about.
Yes, absolutely. I think the local issues are very tied to national issues. What separates my campaign and the work of Progress for All from a lot of others political figures is that we're not tied in with the corporate money at all. We disdain the corporate money. We've pledged not to take a penny of it, and we've been very fortunate that we've had grassroots support that has allowed us to do our work without getting down on hands and knees and begging for corporate money, which unfortunately is the way the political system works too much.
Interesting. Tim Canova, I can't thank you enough for joining me here live on the set. I'm used to being on the other side of the camera and filming your live shots when you're on. Well, we did the morning, noon, night, overnights.
Yes, absolutely.
Many a night Tim Canova has spent here.
Well, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here with you, Scott. And I just love coming to your studio. It's a very relaxing environment, especially for those high-pressure types of interviews when you get 3 minutes on MSNBC or Fox.
You're always like, Scott, how long is the segment going to be? I'm like, Tim, before you know it, when you blink, it's going to be over.
It's true.
And then we have the recording.
I had to really stay on message. Absolutely.
And I know, the news stations, they have to deal with the commercials, and they've got time slots that are very, they have to stick to that time of 3 or 4 minutes a slot, sometimes less if there's breaking news.
That's right.
The advantage of the Live from FSS platform, our show here, is that we give you that platform. We don't have to cut to a commercial.
It's true.
So
it's true. It's nice to be able to roll out and have a discussion without the you could say the pressure of a 2 or 3 minute segment before the next commercial break.
It's got to be tough.
It is tough, but you kind of get used to it a little bit. But I think it shows what's I think a deficiency in our democracy, that it's so expensive for candidates to get their word out, their message out. It's hard to afford to pay for political advertising on TV and radio. We were very fortunate. Our campaign went viral. We were up against a very powerful and controversial figure in my opponent, which gave us a lot of free earned media, but a lot of candidates are not so fortunate. I think that's a problem in the political system, but that's what makes alternative media so important, whether we're talking about social media or what you're now doing here at Florida Sun Studios.
Well, I appreciate that, Tim. You know, the Live from FSS platform, it's an extension we give to all our guests. As I said, Tim Canova, Debbie wants to come on, whoever wants to come on, they're open and welcome here. This is a place, you can call it a safe haven, a safe house. I don't know if that's proper to say, but it's really a place where you can get your message out there. The Live from FSS platform, it's a show we host every Thursday on Facebook at 11 a.m. Eastern, 8 a.m. Pacific. But it's also that platform, again, that we extend to you. You're a small business owner. It doesn't have to be politics, it could be anything. You want to promote your business, you want to get your brand out there, your message out there. Well, the Live from FSS platform gives you the tools to do that. And not only the tools to do it, but it's a professional turnkey solution. A lot of the folks tuning in, they may be like, wow, this set looks pretty awesome. You know, it's amazing. And I will say, yes, you can go live from Facebook on your phone, on your tablet, but what's nice about going to a professional studio, such as Florida Sun Studios, as you've become accustomed to coming here, is that we give you all the bells and whistles that you're accustomed to seeing every day on network news, sports, entertainment, reality TV. We give you the multiple camera angles. We give you in-studio guests such as Tim. We also have the ability to take Skype video calls. We can roll edited footage back, graphics, titles, and so much more. So that really gives us the advantage when it comes to a professional turnkey solution. So if you're serious about hosting your own show, getting your message out there, maybe you want to become a future guest on one of our shows. You're an ordinary person doing extraordinary things. We'd love to hear from you. You could visit our website at floridasunstudios.com. Drop us an email. You could also call the studio, 954-376-4835. But we want you to become engaged. We want you to tune into Live from FSS to see the value that we have to show you guys. You know, we have different guests, whether it's politics, the legal field, small mom and pop shops, the medical field, what have you. We cover an array of issues. We had breaking news a couple of weeks ago during one of our broadcasts. We happen to have a guest on CNBC, a regular, another FSS VIP studio guest, such as Tim Canova. We had Seth Kaplan from Airline Weekly. He was doing a CNBC hit. We had the breaking news with the United Airlines PR nightmare, and we grabbed him for the breaking news at that point. So we cover an array of issues, interest, everything from breaking news, what's going on in the community. We want you to become engaged. And again, send us your questions and comments. A special shout out, if I didn't do it before, to Linda Vasquez, old friend of mine, colleague from WPLG Channel 10, as well as Bruce Serban of Serban Media. Want to give you guys all a shout out. And also Marianne Rosen, we want to thank you for joining the broadcast today. Tim, it's just been a pleasure, my pleasure, having you as my guest today.
Well, thank you.
You're just a likable guy, and I look forward to having you back.
Thank you, Scott. Anytime. And anytime you want to have me back to debate Debbie Wasserman Schultz or some other political figure, you could count on me.
Would love that. I mean, maybe we should start at FSS. We could have a segment where I'm the moderator, you know, like Chris Wallace or whoever, not giving my opinion because, again, FSS is a nonpartisan, non-political party. We're a neutral player, but it would be good to have some debate. You know?
Well, it would be. It'd be very healthy. I think you could always invite establishment political figures and grassroots challengers in either party. And you'd get, I'm sure the grassroots folks would come on gladly. Question is whether you can convince some of these incumbents who try to hide from the people and hide from the media. You know, they usually just want to have very choreographed events when they do speak with the media. That would be the challenge.
Well, we could only ask.
Exactly.
And I know I was disappointed that they only had the one debate on CBS 4 News in the morning. And I was like, Tim, I'm turning into Facebook Live to see it. I'm turning in because I'm actually I live in Boca.
Right.
So I wasn't able to get the CBS 4 feed from where I was at. But I watched it on Facebook.
Right.
And that's another.
It was a Sunday morning at 8 o'clock. Wasserman Schultz just did not want anything prime time, and she didn't want a very long debate either. So she managed to get, you mentioned the NBC affiliate. That's right.
Well, CBS affiliate.
I thought it was Channel 4.
Channel 4 CBS affiliate there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think in times past it used to be NBC,
really?
TVJ. It's changed so much over the years.
Okay. Yeah.
It's hard to keep track of the stations and that. I'm in the Palm Beach market, so I get the West Palm stations. And we'll give a special shout out and a thank you to Rob Geller, who's running the TriCaster today, my director, my TD today. He's filling in for Scott Ferguson. I'd like to thank the crew, Leo Castriota and also Eric Cross, who are responsible, the glue that keeps FSS together, the unsung heroes, would you say, that that really helped me with the operation, because what the folks see at home is a broadcast and it looks clean, it looks polished, it looks professional, which it is, but it takes manpower, it takes people to make things happen.
You've got a great crew here, you always have. Sometimes there's even a makeup person who can powder my head so I'm not shining too much.
And when there's not, it's Makeup by Scott.
That's right.
Makeup by Scott. Needless to say no more. But Tim, you're a handsome guy. You have nothing to worry about. And the 10 pounds, it's pure muscle that you put on.
There you
Pure
go.
muscle. But the
that.
TV does put about 10 pounds on you.
Yeah.
But Tim, you look great.
Yeah.
Again, thank you so much, my
Thank
friend.
you, Scott.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it.
I look forward to having you again soon.
My pleasure. Anytime. Thank you.
Thank you all for joining us today live from FSS. Want to remind you, we'll be live next Thursday, every Thursday at 11 a.m. Eastern. I hope you all have a wonderful day and join us next Thursday as we go live from FSS.